Dr. Shane here. There's been a lot of discussion about how toxic our water is, and there's been an abundance of current literature that really emphasizes and or validates the idea that tap water is in fact contaminated, and it's contaminated at a variety of levels, meaning that we have contamination that comes from the natural water sources, whether they're from wells or from reservoirs. So there's potential for runoff of pesticides, of nitrites from fertilizing, any of the local environment. There can even be contamination microbially from nearby farms or other wildlife. Of course, there's all these potentials. Now, one of the things that happens during the purification process, or the process of going from a natural water source, if it goes through a municipality cleaning system, they introduce a number of what we call antimicrobials, water stabilizers. It's no different than the types of things that we add to processed foods, things that have the ability to sustain life in order for those things not to have life growing them, like our food or water is. Oftentimes they add antimicrobials. And for the most part, these antimicrobials are in most ways not healthy. They're not toxic. It's, a fresh vegetable or a fresh fruit shouldn't last very long. The point is that it's meant to be picked and eaten. And if it lasts for weeks, then that's a red flag. And water is no different. Water should be healthy and pure and not contain these chemicals. And these chemicals can be added purposefully in municipalities as a, quote, protection, but they're not healthy for us. And there are many other things that can get into the water system that aren't necessarily cleaned out. As I mentioned, there can be PFASs, or otherwise known as forever chemicals. There can be pesticides, there can be PCBs, and a lot of the plastics that we worry about that don't get pulled out of the water, because to be honest with you, they're not looking for those and or pulling them out. You have to do a significant amount of testing to identify and then know what to do. Now, the solution is really good in-home water filtration systems. They have a significant upfront cost. They can be upwards of $1,000, and they have to be maintained properly every 6 months. Sometimes you can go a year, depending on how much volume goes through these cleaning systems. That is the solution. Now, I don't want to spend much more time in this moment telling you that there is cellular and physiological complications and challenges and long-term problems with contaminated water with all of these types of compounds, whether they're added as a sterilizer or they just happen to make it in there from the environment. These things have impacts on our health, there's no question. But what I want to emphasize simultaneously is they impact our microbiome. Our microbiome is exposed to everything. Every ounce of water we drink exposes your oral microbiome, your upper GI, your esophagus, your stomach microbiome, and then ultimately, of course, your small intestine and colon microbiome. It is absolutely critical that we consider water as a source of microbiome impact, meaning that our microbes are going to be extremely sensitive to these compounds, more so initially in the short term and in an acute way. They're more susceptible to these compounds because oftentimes these compounds are meant to kill microbes. That is, I think, an impact that is under considered. I mean, clearly there's a lot of evidence and a lot of people talking about the dangers of water, bad water, unfiltered water to our health. But even as critical, it's impacting our microbiome. And we should be drinking a lot of water. We're using a lot of water in our fruit preparation, and even if we're making, kombucha and so on. These things are extremely detrimental to the microbiome. And that's a consideration as to why I highly recommend water filtration in all homes. And like I said, yes, there's an upfront cost, but it's so important that you'll be pleased with the health benefits long term, because you may be working on a protocol to benefit your health, but if you're constantly taking in water that's reversing a lot of these positive microbiome changes you're making, you're really working against yourself. So it's something that you